And celebrate the 12th at parades throughout the north. In the main, they pass off peacefully despite brief standoffs in Derry and Pomeroy. And Spaniards protest at the kidnapping of a politician. He's alive but seriously ill. Good evening. Thousands of Orangemen have been commemorating the anniversary of the Battle of the Boyne today. They marched from towns and villages to 18 centres in the north in a day largely without incident, though there were several standoffs in Derry this evening when Orangemen returned to the city from Limavady. And there are signs of continuing division in the Orange Order over the decision to cancel and reroute some parades. Deputy Grand Master William Thompson criticised what he called the backing down and said it would prove wrong in the long term. Grand Master Robert SAULTERS was heckled as he addressed a gathering on the outskirts of Belfast. Appealing for unity, he called on Orangemen to stand together. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair has urged Sinn Féin to opt for hope by responding to the Orange Order's decision. And President Clinton promised US support to build on this moment of hope. He said the two communities should now reject inexcusable violence.
It could have been a 12th of July shrouded in violence for this young drummer boy, but the U-turn by the Orange Order late on Thursday meant the Belfast County Grand Parade was more carnival than carnage. 250 lodges were headed up by as many bands, leaving from Carlisle Circus for the 5-mile trip to the field at Edenderry. It was the usual mix of pounding fervour, high-minded temperance and the occasional indulgence. But the authorities and senior figures in the Orange Order and Ulster Unionist Party, which was believed to have been behind the compromise, will be relieved the juggling act of last week meant it was a family day out in the best sense. But on the 307th anniversary of the Battle of the Boyne, it was a sober first 12th of July for the new Grand Master.
We're not very happy at the way things have gone, and in particular with Number 10 District not being able to be with us in the Belfast County. And it's sad that the province is in the state that it's in.
The disputed Lower Ormeau Road was deserted. Ballinafie District Lodge stood in mute disappointment. Elsewhere in the north there was unfinished business. Balahi, one of the spots where compromise hadn't been reached, was facing trouble. A section of the main street of this staunchly nationalist village was sealed off. 3 local lodges held an early meeting and decided to call off the return evening parade.
We have reluctantly decided that in the interest of peace, that the 3 lodges would not parade the village tonight. We continue to be quite sad that we are prevented from parading the entire village.
Now let's face it, that's the 4th parade in Balahi in the last 20 days. And that's the 4th time that we have been curfewed. So what we would like the Orange Order to do now, to follow up what they're doing this evening, is get empty dialogue with us.
The decision by the Orange men not to come back here this evening and march again will be a relief both to the security forces and the local residents. But they insist they have the right to march throughout the whole village, and it's a right they'll take to court if necessary. In the 80% nationalist town of Ballycastle, the Reverend Ian Paisley led the parade by the independent Orange Order. Residents gave Orange men the cold shoulder, in spite of the vigorous message being drummed out by some of the bands. In Dunlay, the RUC stopped an orange parade through the predominantly nationalist village. The action angered members of the local lodge, including former Irish rugby international Davy Tweed. A letter of protest was handed in to the RUC.
And now today we're being turned away, not because of a threat of violence from the Orange men, not because of a threat of violence from the band, but because of a threat of violence from Republicans. And again, the RUC have singly failed to give us our civil and religious liberty.
All we want to do is be left within our village, to move freely within our village, unhindered by anybody, RUC or anything else.
The Orange men went on to Clough Mills for their parade. They decided to play one tune later at Dunlay and then disperse for the evening.
About 1,000 Orangemen crossed the Craigavon Bridge into the fountain before leaving for Limavady. This was expected. They always collect the Orangemen from the fountain before leaving the city. However, when they got to London Street, which is between the Fountain area and the city centre, a group believed to be hardliners, unhappy with the decision to switch to Limavady, stopped them and insisted that the parade be rerouted down through the Diamond. This is an area of the city centre which would be contentious with nationalists. A tense situation ensued, and the Chief Marshal was forced to ask police to reroute the parade down a side street off the Diamond.
No, they have put pressure on, and we do not want a confrontation. The police don't want a confrontation, so they hope that we're going for lesser of two evils.
The RUC eventually agreed to divert the parade, but then a group of nationalists tried to prevent the new route being opened. They were removed by police. Within minutes, however, calm was restored and the Derry Orangemen were on their way to Limavady. There they joined the districts of Coleraine and McCuskon. Lodges and bands took 1.5 hours to march through the town. Afterwards, Douglas Caldwell said despite the events of this morning and this week, the parade had gone off well.
We obviously had a great reception, as was probably visible along the route. Obviously there would have been a bit of sentimentality in our being received here today, and I must say we are very indebted to our brethren in Limavady.
This evening the Derry Orangemen decided not to cross the bridge again on their return home from Limavady. Several hundred nationalist protesters had gathered in the city centre as the Orangemen were due to return. However, a small number of the Orangemen who insisted on crossing were eventually allowed through by police who had blocked the bridge. So with feelings in some quarters still running high tonight, the security forces remain on full alert.
In Cady in County Armagh, local residents had been threatening a protest when Orangemen returned this evening, but they later dispersed. And in Pomeroy in County Tyrone, the Orange March was stopped by the RUC. A letter of protest was handed to the police and the parade marched out of the village again.
At one stage in Pomeroy this evening, as policemen faced nationalist residents, confrontation seemed inevitable. Residents said they planned a peaceful protest.
Police attempt to force it through. No, like the fact of the matter is, anything can happen after that.
In the event, the Orangemen accepted police advice that injury to people and property could result from the march continuing. They protested and they turned back.
It's better that we do that than we enter into any deal with any group that represents Sinn Féin IRA in this village.
So tonight in Pomeroy, confrontation has been avoided. The residents are satisfied. The Orangemen are bitter.
On the question of future marches, the local Sinn Féin councillor Sean Begley was taking a hardline position.
Till such times as there is negotiations, well, there's going to be no parades.
And in Cady, County Armagh, nationalist residents also protested. Orangemen were turned away from the centre of the town by the RUC and paraded on the outskirts to the Orange Hall. Residents claimed the Orangemen had broken an agreement reached through a mediator that there would be no marches in the town.
In Belfast, overnight gun attacks on the security forces and on Protestant youths at a loyalist bonfire left 7 people in hospital. The IRA said they were responsible for a gun and bomb attack on a joint RUC army patrol. The incidents were condemned widely. Loyalist leaders said further attacks could lead to retaliation from their paramilitaries. Tonight, the Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams urged calm and called for an end to all sectarian attacks.
The teenagers were shot as they watched a traditional loyalist bonfire in the Tigers Bay district in the north of the city. Police say the gunfire came from the direction of the Catholic New Lodge area. A 14-year-old youth suffered wounds to his abdomen and an 18-year-old had leg injuries. Earlier, an attack on a security force patrol wounded 5 soldiers and RUC officers, including a woman constable. It happened in the Old Park area when the gunman jumped from a car and raked the patrol with gunfire. Another man then threw a blast bomb at the officers, who sustained leg and arm injuries. The attack was later claimed by the IRA. The incidents came in the wake of the Orange decision to pull out of disputed marches like the Ormeau Road and infuriated those who'd been working to defuse the situation.
I think that there's a great sense of anger and anxiety within the Protestant community, because what we've seen last night with the attempt to murder innocent Protestants out there trying to enjoy celebrating their culture and heritage is a naked sectarianism of republicanism. And that's not going to go unnoticed.
We now have 4 Protestants in hospital from gunshot wounds. We have numerous Protestants who've had to move out of their homes because of petrol bomb attacks and incursions into loyalist areas. And I ask why? I ask when the world cries out for the time and space to try and put something together, for the opportunity to put something together, and we're met by violence. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible.
Mr. Irvine said his own credibility was being undermined by such attacks.
I think that slowly but surely, and if it continues as it is, our position will become untenable. I think that we have sacrificed almost everything to try and give the time and space, and I'd have to say we're losing it.
Loyalist leaders say any more attacks will bring retaliation from paramilitaries on their side. It's a worrying feature of a day that's otherwise passed off peacefully.
Well, we're joined now by our Northern editor, David Davenport. David, as you said, all in all, a more peaceful day than had been anticipated.
Yes, Eileen, 5 days ago, people were approaching this weekend with something approaching dread, and that's the sentiment, I think, that persisted right through the week until the 11th hour virtually on Thursday evening, when we realised that moves were afoot behind the scenes. And when those moves came, I think they took everyone by surprise by the seismic nature of the shift that the Orange Order made. And I think that that contributed greatly to a situation today where, despite undoubted raw, bruised feelings on both sides of the community, that we've seen a day that's passed off without serious confrontation.
So at the end of the day, who do you think the winners are here?
Well, if we cast our mind back 12 months, Eileen, to Drumcree this time last year, at that stage I think that Unionists and the Orange Order generally squandered whatever moral high ground they'd been occupying since the IRA bomb in Manchester 3 weeks earlier. The TV pictures from Drumcree a year ago flashed around the world, and I think they ensured that the Unionist Party particularly, even if they felt they might have won that battle, certainly lost the propaganda war. Now, this year, the Orange Order has certainly surprised everybody, and I think perhaps the organisation itself, by the kind of unprecedented decisions that it took here this week. And I think if you want to point to somebody who's likely to shoulder a good deal of the credit for that, it's Lord Molyneux, the former leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, who got involved in high-level negotiations and succeeded in convincing the Orange Order that after the Garvaghey Road last week, this was not the time for triumphalism, and this was the time when they could cede ground in an effort to win international propaganda favour.
OK, David, thank you for that. Now, other news in